PNH is an extremely rare blood disorder. It stands for paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, but it's a condition in which red blood cells are destroyed in the circulation of patients. The major symptoms of PNH are fatigue, abdominal pain, clotting, kidney problems, and respiratory problems. PNH is most commonly diagnosed in the 30s, but it's increasingly diagnosed in younger patients, some under the age of 20, and in more elderly patients as well. Current treatment for PNH is supportive only. That involves the use of blood transfusions, painkillers, fluids, and often requires hospitalisation. Soliris is a highly effective medication. All patients who receive it will derive benefit. There's an overall reduction in the requirement for transfusion, a major reduction in the risk of clotting, and a significant improvement in quality of life in all patients who receive it. There was a great expectation that the recent national budget would include funding for Soliris for patients with PNH. Unfortunately, it didn't. That means that the current patient population is living with great uncertainty about when treatment might be available for them. There is no other effective treatment that alters the natural history of PNH. There are some patients in the country already receiving it on a compassionate program, and one has to wonder how long that can continue in the absence of funding for the medication. It's very distressing as a doctor caring for these patients to know that there is effective, very effective treatment available for these patients elsewhere in the world and not for our Australian patients who contributed to the data that has resulted in its approval elsewhere.
PNH is a very severe disease that is life-threatening in about a third of the patients that are diagnosed with it. They usually die of clots, not only in the legs and lungs, but also in many other organs in the body. PNH can cause damage to many different organs, so that it can cause kidney failure, it can cause liver failure, it can cause severe lung problems. Some patients develop strokes, so it has many, many manifestations. PNH is a very rare disorder, so that in Australia there are less than 100 patients currently identified that have this disease, and about 50 of them are severely affected. Soliris is a drug that is an effective treatment for PNH, but it is not funded for use by Australian patients. It is available in approximately 25 overseas countries. Soliris works in PNH by preventing the destruction of the red blood cells by the person's immune system. If you prevent that destruction, you also prevent the damage to other organs and the threat to the patient's life. There are a small number of patients in Australia who have been receiving Soliris on a compassionate access program. These patients have experienced a dramatic improvement in their quality of life. Many of them have been able to return to work after receiving the drug, and they also haven't had the life-threatening complications that are seen in patients who have not received the drug. Currently, the patients have no access to Soliris around the country. I know that there are several patients in Australia at the moment who are seriously unwell and whose life is at risk within the next 1 to 2 months if they do not promptly receive this drug.
PNH certainly is life-threatening. In fact, 35% of patients will die within 5 years of diagnosis without treatment. That is why treatment is so important. PNH significantly impacts upon patients' lives every day, from the simplest tasks such as walking the dog to more important life decisions such as starting a family, being able to continue to work and maintain a normal social life. People are surviving merely on the donations of blood from other giving Australians. Only 23 patients in Australia have access to Soliris through the company's compassionate use program, which leaves many more out in the cold. Although those patients currently on treatment, their future is uncertain given that there's no funding forthcoming from the government at any time. And commercial realities of the situation means that eventually the company will have to stop funding treatment. It's imperative that the government funds this treatment. There are many Australian patients who are in desperate need of this treatment, several of whom will probably die without it. Well, through our lobbying activity, I received very positive indications that Soliris would be funded in a bipartisan manner and not become the victim of political fix. So I was devastated to hear that Soliris was not funded in the budget and was deferred for political reasons. In February 2009, Soliris was approved for administration by the TGA, and in March 2009, the PBAC recommended it for funding through the Life-Saving Drugs program. So there's really no good reason why funding wasn't provided for in the recent budget. Although there are only a few of us, I don't believe that our lives are any less important to those who suffer from more common diseases.
I was actually diagnosed earlier this year in January. I had experienced some symptoms earlier on, about 6 months prior, but it finally came to a head with the severity of them. After a blood test, I was rushed straight in through emergency, and after 7 days of testing in hospital, they finally came to the diagnosis for the rare blood disorder. It was just horrific. I felt like my whole world had been flipped up and tipped out, and I was only 28. It was just really heartbreaking. Really, for someone of my age, it's crippling. You can't enjoy the quality of life that you should be able to. Sadly, without the medication, I've been advised that it's too risky to go down the road of trying to start a family. I really need to be medicated for my body to be able to cope with pregnancy and for no harm to be done to the baby. At the moment, I'm treating PNH through mainly blood transfusions, and they're happening about every 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going in and getting about 3 bags of blood. It's the only way my body's coping. It's not the best treatment, and it's really frustrating knowing that there is a better treatment out there and I can't access it. The length of my life expectancy will be chopped in half, so I can't go on with that knowledge, living with that every day, knowing that that's just because a decision the government has made. I no longer get to live a full and healthy, happy life. Life-saving. In one word, the funding of this Soliris drug would have been life-saving for me. I am absolutely terrified and angry that they haven't funded it. I can't believe that they're putting a price on one of their citizens' lives.
When this new medication was left out of the budget, I was in shock and devastated. Scared. I mean, what's going to happen when that time comes, and how long before that actually comes. I don't know. I don't want to know, to be honest.
When we found out that the funding was left out of the budget, we were extremely disappointed, and we just couldn't understand why the government would take such an action, considering the consequences of those actions. The lengths that I'd go to would be anything that I can do to preserve my daughter's life, and that means selling the house to fund the drug ourselves. Whatever we can do, we'd rather have our daughter alive than worry about anything material. What I'd say to the decision makers is, when you're looking at the numbers, they're not just numbers on a bit of paper, they're actually people. They have a duty of care to those people, and when they're considering it, instead of seeing Jennifer sitting here, imagine your child sitting here, then make your decision.
I've been having blood transfusions for approximately 14 years, and over that time I've been having 2 bags of blood every 4 weeks. My doctor decided to put me on Soliris because of the amount of blood transfusions I was having, which causes a lot of other problems, and the Soliris would stop the need for having transfusions. Because of the transfusions, you get iron build-up, which means I'm on iron chelation therapy to get rid of the iron. So which hopefully means I won't have a heart attack and drop dead, my kidneys won't pack it in, my liver won't pack it in, because as fast as I'm getting haemoglobin in, I've got to get the iron out. Soliris treatment for me has been really effective. I've been on the treatment 12 months and I have not had to have a transfusion. Very important to me that the government gets behind it. If I don't have Soliris, I go back to having transfusions every 4 weeks. Then my health goes downhill, everything goes downhill, lifestyle, the whole lot. A company that makes a drug can afford to supply it to people. Why can't the government afford to supply it? There's not that many people in Australia with it. So I'm sure they can find the money somewhere. I'd say you want to walk in my shoes for a little while, see how I feel. Then you might think about things.
Hi Jenny, how are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad, Jeff, but feeling a little bit fatigued this week.
Are you?
Yeah, just it's been getting a bit on top of me.
So when was your last transfusion?
Look, it's probably been about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, so I am starting to come down from that.
Think you might be ready for another one soon?
Yeah, look, I think probably another week, maybe week and a half, and I'll be ready to come back in and get another transfusion.
Okay. And do you have any pain now?
Just a little bit of chest pain, just on the side in through here. So
When the news came that it wasn't leukaemia, we were relieved, but it was a bit like a double-edged sword. We then found out it was PNH, and then after we started learning about this disease and the effects of it and what can happen from it, we were just extremely, extremely sad.
How do you feel today?
today I feel a bit tired, even after having a good night's sleep. So with the clean, just makes it a bit more pleasant. But we'll see how we go. I have to drink lots of